Historians say 15 to 18,000 people could attend a gladiator fight.
Please, can you turn that off?
Yeah, no.
All the years I lived in Split, there's not, everybody knows the palace and everything, but not many people speak about Salona and this kind. So I think it's completely, what you would call it, underrated, undervalued in this area. There was not so much with paying entrance that time. Hopefully nobody will come after me for saying that. But hi everyone, today I'm quite excited. I'm gonna basically take you on a tour in Salona. For those of you who don't know, Salona is a ancient Roman city built probably, or it exists since the 3rd century before Christ. It deserves, I think, much more attention than it actually gets. But when we go around here, you will kind of get a feeling of how amazing this place is. And of course, I will have to put a disclaimer. I'm not a historian and I'm also not an archaeologist, but I've been visiting this place the last 15 years. So follow me around the tour and hope you will enjoy it. And here we are supposed to buy a ticket, but it seems like they have a day off. No, they moved it to the Tusculum. Before we actually enter and pay the ticket, we will visit this place, which is located outside of where we're gonna get the entrance tickets. This is called the Manestirine, and this used to be a basilica and a cemetery. And here you can see how it supposedly would have looked like back in the days. Absolutely amazing. Also the aerial photo here of this structure gives kind of an impression of how big and how impressive the place was. So this was probably the entrance to the basilica. You see still, you can basically sense how the structure would have been. So really impressive. And as you see down here, there's sarcophagus, a lot of them around the whole place here, which is of course was when noble people was buried. They were buried in one of these. There was also some really nice marble ones, but they were all transported and now are visible. You can basically see them if you visit the Archaeological Museum in Split. And there's basically no restrictions. You can walk around here on the old walls. You of course have to be a bit careful sometimes. And the excavation of Salona started sometime in the 19th century. Probably there was no interest in preserving things like we have it today. So Salona was just here. It was a bunch of old stone and nobody thought much about it. But, as the society evolved, one day it became, some people, figured out this is important to preserve, and they started the excavation out here. But it's, of course, an enormous job to excavate all this area. It costs a lot of money. So there's still, I think, a huge potential if the money would be available, and so you can really invest in excavation of the area here. I think there would be lots of things, interesting things, which could be found all around. Let's see if we can get out of here so we can go and get our entrance ticket. So this building we see up here is called the Tusculum, and this building is of course not a remain from the Roman Empire. You can see how it's built. It's a newer structure. So I think it was in 1894 it was finished, and it's named Tusculum after this was some famous place around Rome, I think, and they found a lot of artifact here which relates to things from Rome. They are built in, and some of them are exhibited on the ground floor in here. You can see, for instance, some of the stuff here above this door. some of the stuff below the windows was stuff which they basically excavated from somewhere.
Da imate, ako vas neko zaustavi.
Da. Hvala vam.
Hvala.
So now we got a ticket and you had a peek inside of the building. This is, we didn't want to film everything inside because the footage doesn't get that good. But if you visit Salona, plan some time to have a look inside. There's a memorial room for the Frane Bonic, which was the main archaeologist in charge of getting lots of the excavation going here in Salona. And you can see they moved some of the sarcophagus to this place also. I'm not sure if comfort was a priority when they built the chairs here. It doesn't look too comfortable, I would say. I hope that's not exactly how they had it in Roman times. I think they were also very skillful with wood that time, so they probably could have done better than this. And maybe some additional information. Salona is open year-round, so you can basically visit any time. In winter, although only 6 times a week, Monday till Saturday. Sunday it's basically officially closed, although you can actually get in here, but I think you shouldn't because I think the entrance fees is an important part of conserving this place and maintaining it in a good condition. So I think it's always fair to pay for these kind of things. And basically everybody is welcome at Salona, which means adults, children, and also dogs. But be mindful, you have to basically have your dog on a leash when you go here, and also bring the famous poop bags so we can keep the place clean. Where we entered now is what you would kind of call today's main entrance, but there's actually another entrance which is on the western end of Salona, near just basically in front of the amphitheater, which we will see a little bit later. You can also enter there, and there is a third entrance which basically comes directly when you walk from the town Solin. You can just cross the street and then there's a road going over here, but that one doesn't yet have a as far as I'm aware, there's no ticket office over there, so when you come from that one you need to go up and buy a ticket where we just bought the ticket. The first place we get to when we enter here is the city walls. You see some of them down here. When they were covered the largest area, they were around 4 kilometers, the city wall, so quite impressive. So you can imagine it's been a substantial size of city which was within the walls back in the days, and the walls was of course very thick. I think somewhere up to 2.5 meters thick, so they were not easy to crack down if somebody wanted to conquer Salona, which was the case very often. The reason, of course, the walls was here was because many tribes tried to attack Salona over the years, and that was, of course, why the city was fortified or had the walls. And also another interesting thing, you see it here. We will not see it today because basically none of them are left. You see there's a lot of towers, and they think that there was around even more than 90 towers on the walls around. We actually have excavations going on. Really makes me happy to see that. We're gonna have a closer look a little bit later when we return from our round trip. Then we're actually gonna end up, maybe we can even have a chat with some of the archaeologists to hear what they're actually doing. The Romans, basically, this really became a Roman place maybe 50 years before Christ or something like that. Historians say that after Caesar defended Pompey, the general Pompey, that was sometime after that Salona really became Roman. And of course the Roman Empire was pagan at the beginning. So, and they stayed here till the 7th century when the Slavs basically kicked them out. And basically over all the years where the Rome were here, the Romans went into Christianity, which also affected basically the buildings here. Some was built in the pagan time, some of stuff was built later when the Roman Empire was Christian. So you have a lot of basilicas and stuff, and this episcopal center here includes what they call twin basilicas and various other things, and that was built in the Christian period of Salona, which was probably in the 5th century or something like that. So this was what I mentioned with the episcopal center. Also here there's an image or a reconstruction how they think this would have looked like back in the day. So really impressive. I'm still trying to figure out, how they can be sure that they had the red roofs at the time. But if this was actually, if these images actually reflect how it was built 1800, maybe 2000 years ago, it just blows your mind that that was possible at that time. On YouTube, there's a few 3D animations of how Salona actually probably would have looked like back in the days. We will of course add a link in the footer for these videos so you can get a better impression.
So how much would you say it takes for one day a couple of hours to?
I would say if you really want to have a look at it, and if you want to also read what it says on the sign, at least you should probably plan 2 hours to have a nice walk. Anyway, it's a nice nature, so you can enjoy it. You can bring a sandwich, bring a drink. There's no kiosk or restaurants inside here, but put it in a backpack, bring it with you. There's places where you can sit around here. You can maybe sit at the amphitheater. Imagine how the gladiators was fighting, have a cup of coffee or something like that. So probably a couple of hours, I would say. And you can, of course, also through the Archaeological Museum, you can hire a guide to take you on a tour around the Salona. They offer guided tours in multiple languages, so you just need basically to contact them and arrange what time you need a guide. Of course, you need to pay for it, but yeah. And I don't know if you saw, we paid the entrance tickets was €8. And you can, for €10, you can get a combi ticket, which basically allows you to visit Salona and the Archaeological Museum in Split, and that ticket is valid for a week. So no matter if you buy it here at the Archaeological Museum, you don't need to go in the same day. You can go on different days within a week. So this part we see down here, I think this is what they called Insula. And Insula was at that time was basically domestic living areas within the city. But not much of this has been excavated, so they don't know much about it. But in general, the way it was in Roman city was Insula was a domestic living area where they had multi-storage buildings which had shops or things down at the bottom level, like we basically would do today, and then had living areas on the upper floors for the people. I was speaking with the employees from the archaeological museums and asked them, if they couldn't, because it's €8 to get in here, which is fair, but if you need to do it several times a month, it becomes a lot of money. So I actually asked them if they could think about making some kind of a yearly ticket for people who live in the area, maybe €20 or €25, and then you could go here as much as you wanted. But they said they would think about it, but nothing had happened in that direction. And I think that's actually a pity, because if you look, for instance, at National Park Kyrka, You can become a friend of Kirke or something like that it's called, and you pay a little bit more than a entrance ticket in the main season, and you can go as many times as you want outside of the main season. And I think if they could make a similar concept here, I understand they don't want it overcrowded in the main season, but anyway, most of the locals would like to go here at this time of the year where it's not too hot and you can basically more enjoy it in that sense, as a place to have a good, nice walk. So maybe somebody will hear it and maybe they will do something about it. Because I think it's a pity. I think there's a lot of, all the years I lived in Split, there's not, everybody knows the palace and everything, but not many people speak about Salona and this kind. So I think it's completely, what do you call it, underrated, undervalued in this area. Lots of people don't spend enough time here, and I think if you would kind of animate that a little bit, it would be a great thing, because it's amazing historical place. So what I wanted to show you over here was what used at periods of Salona. This down here used to be the main gate. It's called Porto Cesaria, but as Salona expanded, basically, and it ended up being in the middle of Salona, so it lost the importance as a defense gate. You can probably see the structures. This was a defense tower of the gate. And now we're gonna look from up down, but you kind of get the feeling. So you had the track, and you had over there, you had closer to the wall. Over here you had basically where people could walk through, and the middle part would be basically if they came with horses, with wagons, and they had to go through. But look how thick the walls are. You can basically imagine it was good protection. If you look to this side, you will see a lot of trees. Also behind me, and to this side of me you see a lot of trees. All of this is basically garden areas today, but it used to be part of Salona, but because, as I said at the beginning, this first got archaeological importance in 1850. Before that, because Split Salona was expanding, probably nobody paid attention. People just basically built open gardens everywhere around, but underneath there's actually the old Roman town. So if you start digging in any of these places here, you most likely is gonna find remains from the Roman city. And this is also why today, if you are building even in the city Salona, which is 1 kilometer from here or 500 meters from here, if you build anywhere around there and you basically need to dig down, it is very likely you can run into the aqueduct or something like that. And if that happens, you need to have the archaeologists out there. It needs to be documented so they know where the things was found. This part, I cannot recall what that was.
Sarcophags, I think?
Yeah. Yes, 16 sarcophags, yeah. In line here. Yeah, according to the history, when the Slavs conquered Salona in the 7th century, I think around year 650, they destroyed a lot of stuff here, and probably, everybody who came after them kept destroying. Sarcophagus was destroyed, probably a lot of the stone was removed, used for building around. Unfortunately, it's not like Pompeii, which was covered in ashes, and that's why they could maintain that in a way better condition. One of the main archaeologists on this side was Dybvad. He was actually a Danish guy who went down here and spent, I think, 10-12 years permanently down here excavating in Salona, and continued to be part of the excavation down here during the years for a period of 40 years. So he eventually became an honorary citizen of the city of Salona because of his contribution to this area. I think they had a total, is it 6 or 7 basilicas here in this area. Some inside the walls, some outside the walls. The one we saw at the entrance, the two at the Episcopal Center, this one here, and there's a few of them also in the outskirts, which you can, it's not part of when you walk around here. The main cathedral and the patron of Split is Saint Duye, and Saint Duye was actually a bishop in Salona. And as the Romans was basically persecuting Christians and killing them, Saint Duye was one of them, killed by basically the troops or the forces, the army forces of Diocletian around year 300 and around year 300 basically. So at the beginning he was buried here, but later he was moved, and now he's actually buried somewhere in the palace, or his sarcophagus is somewhere in the palace, and the cathedral Svete Duye is standing on top of the mausoleum of Diocletian. So it's some kind of circle, karma, what you would call it. He killed him, now he's basically, his cathedral is standing on the grave of Diocletian. And the small white house you see here, we can go a little bit closer, is basically where you buy the ticket if you choose to enter Salona by the amphitheater, which is just here in front of us. Here you can see there's also plenty of parking. But this is basically where you go and buy the ticket. Again, here you see a reconstruction how it would have looked, or presumably would have looked like back in the days. Some of it is recognizable when you go around, but the height of 3 levels here is really hard to see, probably because some of it was destroyed, some of this is maybe still underneath, which needs to be excavated. But it was an impressive structure. That time historians say 15 to 18,000 people could attend a gladiator fight here. So not a small location. When you visit somebody, it's polite to walk in the front door, which is also what we're gonna do here. So we're gonna go into the amphitheater, entering by the main entrance. You can of course sneak in anywhere you want, but I think this is more appropriate. And then of course you had seating places. I think the first two, there was 3 levels kind of, and the first 2 levels was with seating, and the top level was for people standing. And then there was lounges. So the governor of the Salona, Dalmatia, had a lounge which was specially luxurious for him. But I guess if you ended up in here, you either needed to have a lot of muscles, be good with a sword, or be able to run very fast. I'm not sure, I haven't been able to find any information if they would actually use, if they would have fights with wild animals, like it's known from other amphitheaters, or if it was only gladiators fighting here. But anyway, there was a lot of these fights, and I think it went on till sometime in the 5th century when they stopped doing gladiator fights. And if you happen to be around Split, I think it's in July, there's events taking place out here which is called Romantic Nights in Salona, where you have a show in the evening out here where everything is lighted up. It looks absolutely fantastic. So check the calendar and see if it fits with the time you're in Split. Definitely go out here, it's a fantastic experience. I mean, I know people always speak about how was the pyramids made, but how did they get this rock up on top of the other one? It still blows my mind. thinking about no hydraulics, all the tools we have today. Impressive. I mean, it's physics, but still impressive. Now, when my kids used to be small, I used to take them here in the weekend. There was not so much with paying entrance that time. Hopefully nobody will come after me for saying that. But you know, we went out here, brought some lunch, brought some drinks, and we were playing a little bit soccer and having fun down here, maybe badminton or something like that. It's a nice place. Let's see it from up here. Is that something new with buying the tickets here?
Yes.
Because it always used to be Kuchita over there.
Yes, but now we are selling just here.
Okay, but that's new from this year, or what?
No, we just we're selling right there and here.
Yeah.
On the both places.
Okay. Last year, when I was here, maybe in October or something, the house up here was closed, and it didn't say anything that you could buy a ticket over here. It was always only at the main entrance. So I think it's something they started with this year. But it also makes sense. There's more and more people every year. And also because now it got a bit colder, so it's nice for them that they can sit inside. So we are slowly getting back near Porta Cesaria, and we're gonna make a turn and walk towards the Roman Theatre, the Roman Forum, and Terme, and San Terme, which was located out in the south side of the Roman town. My wife, dog, and I used to go for a walk here relatively often in the winter period. And last year we were out here a Sunday, and we walked down this way, and a snake ran over my shoe. My wife was screaming, the dog was screaming, and since then my wife was not so keen of going out here. But I think I slowly am convincing her again, you know, because now the weather is nice for walking in Salona. It's not too hot, so we will see. But just that you're aware we are in the nature, so these things happen. So now we are coming up to a structure which actually I didn't see the first many times I visited Salona. But what you see here is the remains of a large Roman theatre. So you kind of can sense the moon-shaped structure here, and over in front of us must have been the stage area probably, and here where we're standing now would be where spectators would be sitting and enjoying the shows. But as you see, this part I also would imagine if money could be found and there was done some more excavation here, probably this place could look amazing if they would dig out much more of the stuff here. So hopefully that's something which is going to happen in the future. So actually there's a path in here. It's a bit hard to see now. Yeah, this is not part of the signed walking trails which you would see, so I figured this one out by exploring myself. But you can actually walk this way and get back to the kind of main part where they excavated. Okay, it seems a little bit. This is better in the winter when there's not so much green stuff. As I said, we decided to walk back to the main road. My secret path turned out not to be in so great a condition, so I don't want to lure any of you guys that way, so we're going to take the safe road. I sincerely hope they had better roads back in those days. So from here you see it really good. Porta Cesaria, as I mentioned, which used to be a at times in Salona's history, this used to be the main western gate to the town, but later as the town expanded, it was just a gate in the middle of the city. But as you can see, the construction to left and to the right, there was entrance for pedestrians, and in the center, if you came with a carriage and a horse or horseback, this was basically where you have to enter. And on each side, you had the towers. If you didn't, if they deem you not to be a friendly guy, they would probably have dealt with you from up there. How they think Porta Sassari would have looked like at that time, you see, really impressive. And if I go over here, as I mentioned, you saw the tree, so which was basically pedestrian access, and then you had basically the main one for the carts or people on a horse. And you had the two towers, the ones where we also saw the structure. You can kind of see the shape. We could recognize that when we look from the top, that it basically is eight. What do you call it? Octa.
Yeah.
That was the way they were constructed. This is what they call the 5 Arches bridge. And here you had basically the water from the Jadro River flowing. And the bridge was basically, you had the roads going west, east or east-west in the Roman Empire. So the road came from Porta Sassari, went over the bridge, and then it split in two. It basically, you had one going to the north to Porta Antearia, and you had one going to the south out to Stobridge. But what I also wanted to show you is Salona name, but it was actually by the Romans, it was named Salona Martia Ivilia Valeria Felix. I think this is the official one. And the Valeria part was not part of the name at the beginning because according to the Roman Empire, it needed to have a certain, what do you call it, value or prominence, the city, or a value within the Roman Empire before they added Valeria to the name. As I mentioned earlier, there was other places within the city which has smaller baths, but this was the great city bath. You can see structure, we will look at it in a little bit later. Quite impressive. It had hot rooms, steam rooms, exercise room, cold water room, dressing room, massage room. So for all the, probably for the higher class people, they could go here and get a really spa treatment as we know it today, maybe even in an elevated, on an elevated level compared to what you would get in most places today. So the Roman knew how to live the life in a comfortable way, at least if you are at the more higher class in the society. And here we have the excavation going on, which I find is really interesting. Not sure if they will allow us to film, but at least from distance here nobody will notice. Wow.
Please, can you turn that off?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, we were not allowed to film the archaeologists, but we had a nice talk with them. They have been basically excavating here since 2018, and every year they take an additional portion. But of course, it's a big job because they have to be very careful when they dig down. It goes slowly with brushes and these kind of things because they always discover new stuff. They think this finding, what we saw now, was from the 4th or the 5th century. And another thing which he could clarify for me, I've been searching information, what I mentioned to you earlier, with the construction work on the main road, which was delayed due to some findings. I couldn't find any information online regarding what they actually found, but he was able to tell me that it was a part of the southern wall. So and also a part of a tower. So this just basically shows how big Salona was. And they found a way to preserve what they dug up out there. So when they construct a new bridge, they're somehow gonna protect this part of the wall they found out there. So we are basically back where we started. So this ends my small tour around Salona. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, hope I gave you some appetite to actually visit this nice place if you're in Split and or somewhere in this area. And basically then I would simply say till the next one.